more than 20 home runs this year, so they are stacked. Well, Drew Brees, of the many accomplishments, I said this a couple hours ago, in my lifetime, there has never been a quarterback who has overcome as many obstacles as Drew Brees. He's not 6'5". He tore up his knee in high school. He went to a kind of a historically running conference, cold weather basketball school, Purdue. Then he plays in San Diego, gets hurt. And then Miami won't clear him. Then he goes to New Orleans and Katrina, and Sean Payton at one point has to leave for a season. Obstacle, 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 obstacle. And you look up, and he's breaking Brett Favre and Peyton Manning's records. That's why I've said I call him one of the great eight players that's ever played that position that I've ever seen in my life. Impossible not to root for, and Drew has been kind enough to spend a few minutes with us today. Drew, how are you? Thanks for joining us.
I'm doing great, Colin. How are you?
Great. You know what I thought was, and it really speaks to you, instead of last night coming out and saying, I wanted to prove people wrong, you came out and said, this record proves so many people right. And I thought that was a remarkable thing to say because it'd be very easy to go the other way. And you wanted to talk about breaks and support. Go back. If I said to you, NFL, your first big break, what was it?
Well, honestly, what I learned through the draft process very quickly was that it was more important to end up in the right place, in the right situation, with the right team, the right system, the right coaching staff, as opposed to just getting drafted as high as you possibly can. I mean, I think that's a lot of guys coming out. That is their intent and their goal is to get drafted as high as they possibly can. And yet, at the end of the day, it's about being in the right situation. And I felt like being drafted to the San Diego Chargers in the second round was the best place for me because I had the chance to be an understudy to Doug Flutie, who was one of my childhood role models, the guy that I looked up to, an undersized guy who just constantly overcame the odds, and being around guys like Junior Seau and Rodney Harrison and other great leaders there in San Diego, around a coach like Marty Schottenheimer, I felt like that helped me build the foundation by which I would build my NFL career.
And then you end up with Sean Payton, who, like a Sean McVay, none of us knew who Sean Payton was. We didn't know who Sean McVay was. When did you realize with Sean Payton, wow, this could be the perfect coach for me?
I'll remember forever the first time Sean called me. I was literally in a Arby's drive-thru in Birmingham, Alabama. I was there rehabbing. I just had my surgery with Dr. James Andrews, 2 months post-op. Could barely lift my arm still above my shoulder. And here's this, coach calling me, fresh from the Cowboys organization, getting the job in New Orleans. I mean, I don't think he knew exactly what he was taking on at the time, and yet he was telling me that I was his guy. And listen, my confidence took a hit, after that injury, just because as much as I felt like, hey, God had a plan and I was going to come back stronger. I mean, listen, I had my doubts. That was a very daunting time for me, when I was told, hey, 8 months until you're able to throw and then 2 years before you really feel normal again. I mean, that was overwhelming. Yet here was a guy looking me in the eye and saying, you're my guy, you're going to lead this organization.
What's amazing about you is you literally, when I think New Orleans is the perfect place for you. The offense, your offense is progressive and smart and crazy and fun. And New Orleans, Mardi Gras, crazy and fun. And people have doubted New Orleans. Could they come back? There is this link between you and the city in which you play. And I think that's 100 years from now. I mean, do you ever think about that in a weird way, New Orleans, the city, was perfect for you?
There's no question. There's no question. God had a plan. I felt like it was a calling to come to New Orleans. We needed New Orleans as much as you could say maybe New Orleans needed somebody to believe in them too. And so it was the perfect fit. It was the perfect match. In a way, we were both trying to rebuild, right? Rebuild our lives, our career. There was so many unknowns, and yet I just felt like we were all leaning on each other. And the most amazing thing I think my wife Brittany and I experienced when we came on our recruiting visit, so to speak, in New Orleans was that every person that we met really didn't say anything about football. what they said was, thank you for wanting to be a part of this community and considering New Orleans. And I think you realize very quickly that New Orleans is a special place. It's a unique place. So many of the people who live here have lived here for generations and generations. So it's in their blood. There's a spirit here. There's a culture here that's unlike any other.
One of the challenges you face now as a father, a husband, 39 years old, you are now surrounded often by 22-year-olds. There is an age gap. And it doesn't matter if you're a CEO or a high school principal. You have to bridge that gap. You have to relate to young players who are often backs, receivers, and offensive linemen. How have you done it? Because when I watch you, you're going to be a 40-year-old guy. You're surrounded by kids, and they look up to you, and they listen to you. And I don't think that's easy. And you have bridged it. Do you think about that?
Yeah, it is unique because I definitely feel like, I come from a different generation. In most cases, guys in the locker room are 22, 23, 24. So I'm 15, 16, 17 years older than a lot of these guys. I like to think that being around them rejuvenates me. It keeps me young. I feel a great sense of responsibility, each and every year to come in and take the new, draft class or the young free agents that come in and you're kind of starting from scratch, the opportunity to build up the offense and recreate the identity of your team again. And I feel like I learn as much from them as I hope they learn from me. And, I don't know. I think having three young boys too, as I'm talking to you, I'm in the whirlpool at the Saints facility with my boys. They're running around. One of them's naked right now, jumping in the whirlpool. And they're just like, they keep me young too. They keep me up to speed on all like the latest Fortnite dances and all that other stuff too. So I feel like I'm pretty hip to the game, even though I'm kind of an old guy now. But now listen, I love the locker room. I love being around the guys. I know that a lot of the guys who have left the game most recently, retired guys that I know and am good friends with, they say, man, the thing I miss the most is the locker room, being around the guys, and then game day. Those are the things you really can't replace, once you leave the game. And so I'm just trying to enjoy the moment, enjoy every second of it.
Well, we've enjoyed every second of you, Drew Brees. 10 minutes on a busy day. Enjoy your family. Thanks for joining our show, buddy.
Thanks, Colin.
Drew Brees. He's great. Joy Taylor with the news.
No. Turn on the news. This is the Herdline News.
The kids running around the facility is the best. That's got to be like the coolest moment for a player. My brother used to bring his sons into the locker room. It's like the best feeling to have them around, what it is that you do. All right, so the Chiefs are off to another 5-0 start. I'm very excited for this matchup with the Patriots this weekend, especially
it's the game of the week.
Tom Brady decided to sprinkle a little extra sauce on it for everyone. We appreciate that, Tom. Appreciate the content. Well, Travis Kelce says this year's fast start feels different for the Chiefs than in recent years, and it's due to their confidence and accountability.
So I think it has a lot to do with years past. Guys feeling sick of the kind of the ups and downs, roller coasters, being able to take what happened last year and fix it. And sure enough, the finishing the games and finishing week in, week out, finishing the practices, overall, the finish mindset has been huge.
I heard that a lot this weekend, too, with the Rams. I don't think it's any coincidence that those two teams are on top of the league right now. There's a lot of talk about transparency and accountability and a little bit of what you were alluding to with Odell yesterday, just having open conversations about what's actually happening with the team. I feel like that changes things because you are accountable within each other.
The other thing is we have to remember, Joy, September is really a fun month for offensive players. The Kansas City's ultimately going to be defined by stopping people.
Sure.
Okay, so now the weather gets crappy. And now you're going to turn the ball over. And now, the receivers slip on the routes and the ball comes out of your hand. Is that ultimately September is really built for the most athletically gifted offensive teams. Now, from about 2 weeks from now, Kansas City's going to – I can't wait to see this about New England. Can you get New England off the field? Because my gut feeling is New England is going to chip away at them 4.5 yards at a time, and Patrick Mahomes is going to be sitting on that sideline, sitting there not getting the ball.
Sure. the true test of what you are is adversity, not when things are great.
Right.
So this weekend for the Rams going against the Seahawks and at not being the Breeze blowout that we thought it was going to be, like those kind of situations are really what tests you as a team. But I think what he's alluding to is there's a feeling of optimism now, whereas before it's like, all right, we're kind of starting to fall apart. It's kind of what we do. It's a change in mindset. So the Eagles and Fletcher Cox agreed to a restricted contract that frees up $6.5 million in cap space this season and $11.7 million more next season. So what are the Eagles up to? Well, Le'Veon Bell. According to Adam Schefter, that is not the case. They are not trying to get Le'Veon Bell. But with Jay Ajayi's season-ending ACL injury on Sunday, it's hard to imagine that the Eagles aren't trying to utilize this new cap space for something. So Howie Roseman might be.
I still can't figure out why the New York Jets don't make a run at him.
I mean, it's entirely possible that the Steelers are also not trying to trade him.
Yeah, I mean
you have to entertain any trade offers, obviously, that come your way.
James Conner's getting plenty of yards, like 600 yards.
You have to entertain trade offers, but at the end of the day, I think that they're probably just trying to stick with Le'Veon Bell.
Because they don't know what they're trading for. Are you trading the price of a rental or the price of Le'Veon Bell for the next 4 years?
Well, you wouldn't trade for him if you weren't going to pay him.
Right, but you can't sign him. So he could then, you could trade a first-round pick for him, and then he signs somewhere else, and you wasted a first-round pick for half a season of Le'Veon Bell.
Well, it's certainly risky for whoever's going to make the trade more than it is for the Steelers. But in my opinion, the Steelers are probably trying to hold on to him for whenever they get into the postseason. James Conner's been doing a nice job, but Le'Veon Bell is Le'Veon Bell. So all this trade talk may just be, smoke and mirrors. Finally, Steph Curry said the Warriors should not be afraid to discuss the notion of winning their third consecutive NBA title this season. And really that should come as a surprise to no one because he believes that a three-peat is very much attainable for Golden State. He said, we talk about the three-peat just because it's in front of us. We understand that winning a championship is attainable if we take care of business, and doing it 3 years in a row is a tremendous opportunity for us that we should not be afraid to talk about and go after. I know everyone's going to freak out because he said three-peat and championship, and I don't know what else are their expectations supposed to be for the season.
You're supposed to be confident. I don't have a problem with it. They're favorites, and they should be favorites. They have the best group of players easily in the league, the best roster easily.
I mean, it's not even that he's being conceited or anything like that. Like, the goal is to win championships. That should be everyone's goal going into the season. If that's not your goal, then your organization needs to back it on up and fix your mentality. Like, your goal is to win a ring. They've been winning rings, and then they won the last 2 rings, so they're trying to win another one. That's just the way that it goes. I know everyone gets, super crazy when people talk about winning a championship before the season starts, but I do think it's going to be different for Golden State this year, whereas last year during the regular season, they kind of coasted a little bit and it got a little boring. I feel like at least they should go into this season with a little more sense of urgency during the regular season.
Yeah, I mean, they got smoked multiple times by over 20 points last year. I think it's really hard. I think it's a star-driven league, and in basketball's different. When you step on the floor at the YMCA, you know who's got better players. It's not like the NFL where there's a lot of injuries during a year, or hockey, your goalie gets hot. Basketball is a weird sport. Like, if I got better players than you, I can beat you all day, and I can beat you next year, and I can beat you next year. They have the best players, and they know it every game they step on the floor. So the battle isn't physically. The battle is psychological. Like, how do you get ramped up?
They've won. So they know exactly what it takes to do that in the postseason.
Joy Taylor with the news.
Well, that's the news.
And thanks for stopping by.
The Herd Lie News.
David and Njoku, Cleveland Brown tight end, will be joining us before the end of the hour. Drew Brees just stopped by. I love having that. Well, we do it every Tuesday at this time because Drew Brees set a bunch of records. We pushed it off for 30 minutes, but let's do it on Tuesday. Let's do our herd hierarchy.
Herd hierarchy.
Time is now. Let's go.
The top 10 NFL teams according to Colin. Number 10.
I like the Chicago Bears. Didn't play, but they're number 1 in the NFL in sacks. Best pass rush in the NFL. They lead the NFC in takeaways. They have the best rushing defense. And I think Mitch Trubisky's limited, but Matt Nagy is a very clever offensive coach. They're about 60% college, 40% pro. And I hope the Bears remain in the top 10 all year. I think it's a really, really interesting team. And they have Chicago's always been led by their defense. Find a great Bears team. It always feels like it's led by its defense. So they're playing to brand, but I have the Bears at number 10.
Number 9.
Minnesota, same division. Listen, Kirk Cousins is fine. I mean, he's not, in a top 7, 8 in the NFL, but he's third in the NFL in passing. They have tremendous wide receiver threats. And by the way, here's the thing about Minnesota. Their defense isn't great, but it's not bad on third down. Listen, everybody's scoring in this league. I kind of look at your third down defense. Can you situationally get the opposing offense off the field? Minnesota's not terrible at that. They're not. And so I have the Vikings with a very electric pass offense, a good home field advantage, the best roster in their division, and they get you off the field pretty well on third down is number 9.
Number 8.
Carolina Panthers. Listen, when Cam's winning, it's because he has a very dynamic running game, and Carolina leads the NFL in rushing. But I also think this is it. He's completed over 60% of his passes. He didn't play brilliantly for all of the New York Giants game, but he did make some big throws. This team is different. They're a little bit like Chicago. They're going to do it with their front 7 defensively. They're going to run the football more than other teams. They're not going to be as dynamic on the perimeter and outside. I mean, I think Christian McCaffrey leads them in receptions. That tells you all you need to know. But they're definitely a top 10 team. I have Carolina at number 8.
Number 7.
I still think Pittsburgh's loaded. And again, Pittsburgh's got problems defensively, but here's what they do. They get to the quarterback. So my theory on the NFL, if they're the opposite of New England. New England's great on the back end of their defense. Pittsburgh's great up front. They're not good in the back end. And if you told me I had a choice between the two, I'd rather have a great pass rush and figure out the secondary later. By the way, the Steelers have scored 30-plus points in 3 of their last 4 games, and James Conner's got almost 600 scrimmage yards. So they're not a great team, but I thought they were super impressive against Atlanta. They are growing, and I have them at number 7.
Number 6.
I still like the Ravens a lot. I wish Joe Flacco at 6'5" would have fewer balls batted down at the line of scrimmage. I can't figure that out. But they bring in Lamar Jackson now. That works. They lead the NFL in scoring defense, and they also lead the NFL in third down defense. And again, I think this team's going to be better by Thanksgiving. They got 2 rookie tight ends, 3 new wide receivers. They had many opportunities to win that game, and they didn't. But I'm not selling all my stock on Baltimore. I still think they're the best team in that division, best defense in that division, best scoring defense in the NFL, best third down defense in the NFL with a veteran quarterback and a veteran head coach.
Number 5.
L.A. Chargers. I mean, they just threw the Raiders around for 3.5 hours. By the way, their only losses are to the 5-0 Chiefs and the 5-0 Rams. And they were in both those games. So Phillip Rivers has had 6 consecutive games with multiple touchdown passes dating back to last season. That's the NFL's longest streak. And if you watch the Raider game again, that defense shut down the Raiders. And the Raiders have all sorts of offensive elements, and they shut them down. They may be the second team in L.A., but the Chargers' personnel front to back is really, really good.
Number 4.
New England, it's a quarterback coach league. They've scored 38 points in each of their last 2 games. Again, they don't have a pass rush. And I don't know if you can generate one. I think you can get their secondary's great. It's the strength of their team. Brady, Gronk, Edelman, Chris Hogan, Sony Michel, that rookie running back, James White. Their strength of their offense is they've got a lot of efficient offensive players. Not a lot of dynamic guys, but a lot of efficient guys. They can pick up yards, a lot of first downs, a lot of time of possession. Defensively, no pass rush, but they're tremendous at corner, great at safety. And I think they have the best coach and quarterback in the NFL, so I have them at 4.
Number 3.
I think the Saints remind me a lot of the Patriots with a better offensive line. Nobody in the NFL's allowed fewer sacks. They've got a better offensive line in New England, and they do have a dynamic wide receiver on the outside. But I look at this team, and I think smart, efficient. They can 5-yard you to death. You can't get to their quarterback. They don't turn it over much. Very good home field advantage. I mean, that was embarrassing for Washington last night. That wasn't competitive. And that was Alex Smith and a veteran coach with coming off a bye week. I got New Orleans at 3.
Number 2.
Kansas City. By the way, even Vegas admits that turnovers are random, except for New England and Kansas City. Andy Reid's teams don't turn the ball over. Only 3 turnovers. Once again, Kansas City, fewest turnovers in the NFL. Now, they're last in total defense, and that's a huge problem. They started last year 5-0, they're 5-0. I think against New England, I think the way you look at Kansas City is just 5-yard them to death. Death by 1,000 cuts. I think the defense is ultimately going to catch up to them. They've got to get better, especially on the back end. Too many explosion plays they give up, but I have Kansas City at 2.
Number 1.
The Rams. Listen, going to Seattle, losing 2 of your receivers, and still winning that game, I still think this is a great football team. Now, It's a salary cap era. They're not perfect. They don't have a great pass rush. Ndamukong Suh and Aaron Donald are monsters on the interior, but they don't have a great pass rush. And it's safety back end. You can go over the top a little bit on them. I don't think their linebacking core is perfect, but if you're talking, coaching, coordinating, O-line, interior D-line, corners, receivers, superstar back. It's funny, for all the points, they still feel like a power offense to me with Todd Gurley. I have the Rams at number 1. Browns tight end David Njoku going to be joining us. By the way, you guys think I don't like Baker Mayfield. How come I always talk about the Cleveland Browns? How come I'm having another Cleveland Browns?